Hey, welcome to Socialism for All. Today's date is August 3rd, 2022, and this is S4A Livestream number 30. Nice round number. I have a couple of things prepared today. Otherwise, we're just going to talk with the chat. As usual, sort of office hours here, touching grass together. I guess we're still online, but, having some interactions that are not purely text on screen, that's good. So, yeah, 20 or so people in the chat, and we'll, like I said, go over a few things that I grabbed previously. Otherwise, just sort of see where everybody's at, how everybody's doing. I think that these are good to do once a week, just to, have some discussions that, might not happen otherwise, bring some things to the fore. So what I have planned, a little bit on monkeypox, I was posting on this in the community tabs. Just wanted to kind of follow up in the video. There's a comment. Somebody said that they have a huge criticism of the channel. I actually didn't think it was that huge, but I did want to respond to it in a video, so we'll talk about that. I had wanted to do more on that stupid having rich friends means that like you do better study. I haven't had time to go all the way through it yet. But anyway, a little bit on Caleb Maupin too. Again, we don't want to advertise for the Pat Sox. Do kind of want to give him a kick in the ass on the way out the door, though, which I think is happening at this point. I think that they're getting deflated. Maupin is declaring he almost doesn't want to call himself a communist anymore. Great. The sooner the better. Please stop. We might even stop covering it at all were he and the other people like him, right-wingers pretending to be socialists. If they were to just stop that, we might, stop covering it entirely, because that's why. I started this channel in February 2020, and I was having to interact with the Maupin people, and I was like, what is this? I had no idea that that was going on. And it's like all these right-wingers calling themselves Marxists. I was not aware that this was, the problem that it was, but they would flood into the channel. And, sometimes people say, oh, just, ignore it, it'll go away. That definitely was not the case. So, S4A has been growing. It's up over 9,000 subscribers now, which is great. Welcome to all the new people, gaining about 120 some people a week. So welcome to all the new people. Hope to interact with you in the comments at some point. To get it this big without it getting crushed by all those like PatSoc right-wing opportunists and just plain fascist trolls. A lot of blocking was involved, a lot of frustration on my part. But here we are. We made it through, we made it over the hump, and it looks kind of like the PatSoc thing has been dying out, as we were talking about in the last video. So then we can get back to just doing what we need to do. And obviously other obstacles will pop up in the course of the movement, but as the movement gets stronger, of higher quality, and everybody gets more experienced in dealing with these things, we can take care of them more quickly as they come up. So anyway, let's start with the chat, and we'll get to some of the other stuff later on. I guess before we do that, I just want to mention, the COVID update. COVID is not forgotten. However, those long updates that I did recently really took a lot out of me. I do have probably enough for another 3 or 4 hour update. But after doing those, I really need to step back from COVID. So I'm not even going to show Biobot today. Biobot is biobot.io/data, DATA. If you want to see wastewater data on the COVID-19 ongoing pandemic, there's a massive, massive surge. It's the second biggest surge of the whole pandemic going on right now. It looks like the level is temporarily dropping. I don't know if that is going to stay that way or if it's going to plateau or if it's going to peak again. For right now, it looks like we may have hit the peak of BA5. That seems a bit counterintuitive to me, but we'll see what the data say as they keep rolling in. But I mean, like I said, kind of skip that for now, just a bit burned out on it. We'll come back to it again soon. We will cover monkeypox later. So anyway, getting into the chat. What is going on in the chat? So, yeah, so the streams now are going to be done. I think I mentioned in the last live stream, they are going to be done Wednesdays, 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern, for about 2 hours. And content is probably going to go up on the channel Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. There may be, like today, a couple of videos went up this morning that weren't done for yesterday. So like you might see things on Wednesdays and Fridays sometimes. But that's kind of what I think I can live with in terms of a schedule. So anyway, that's kind of where the channel's at now. And actually, you know what? Let's get this out of the way. Thanks to the current patrons, whose names will be on the screen in just a second. There are their names. Really, it's this support. We don't run ads. We don't run sponsorships or any kind of tacky shit like that that really helps the corporations more than it helps the creators. I want to subject you to that. We'd like to keep this non-commercial. That said, I do live in a place where bills have to be paid, and this takes time. So if people, head to patreon.com/socialismforall. Even if you want to do a one-time donation, you can just sign up for 2 or 5 or 10 or whatever. You'll be billed there, and then you can cancel, so it won't be recurring. Of course, the recurring support is helpful because then I can plan from month to month what's going on and get some idea of that. But it really does help. That's where all of the support financially for this channel comes from. Like I said, no ads or sponsorships or anything. Again, trying to keep it non-commercial. I feel like when people do sponsorships and stuff like that, what they're telling you is they're willing to say at least some things for money. And then the question is sort of like, how far does that extend? Hopefully not beyond the sponsorships, but that's why we'd like to keep that sort of a separate question. And I have to say, my dealings with patrons so far has been great. People come in, usually just because they're real fans of what we're doing here and the education and the, kind of moderated community that we're doing. That's not just overrun with trolls. And they just want to support it. It's not really a thing where patrons come in and then they start twisting my arm about what content to do. So, in fact, that would be incredibly irritating to me. Just, I don't really like that kind of stuff. But it doesn't happen. So this is a model that works well. And anyway, thanks to the patrons again. So anyway, somebody said, wait, aren't there 38 videos on the basic study guide already? No, there are 26, just like letters in the alphabet. However, some of them are not, I haven't done them in-house yet, so I had to use like Pinballs or somebody else's audiobooks, and they're not all in one piece, so it looks like there are more. You might be actually looking at another study guide, though. Like, there are a few up on the channel. I have one recommended by Hakeem, one from the American Party of Labor, some from the Marxist-Leninist Reading Hub. So there are a number of like recommended, basic study guides, but the first one that's from Movimiento Anti-Imperialista, MAI, that's the one I started with, and that's sort of the main one. When I refer to the basic Marxism-Leninism, that Leninism study guide. I knew there was a reason I wasn't trying to say that. That's the one that I mean. So yes. Okay, but have I considered that you get tired of reading after 2 hours? No, I can't go that long either. I mean, but I don't do the audiobooks in one take, like ever. In fact, when you hear it, I mean, I'm constantly misspeaking and things. So sometimes I'll read through a line and I'll just sort of emphasize the wrong word, and it'll stick in my brain, and I'll be like, that'll be confusing to people. So I really try to read them in a way that is as clear as possible as to the meaning of what's being said. I really try to help you out by accentuating the words in a way that's going to give you the meaning, at least as far as I understand it. And it's a lot. It's kind of like shooting a movie in a way. You got to get a good take. So yeah, no, it's pretty tiring. Sometimes the works are just interesting enough that it kind of pulls you through it. Sometimes less so. Let's just put it that way. Anyway, somebody said, I spoke with the Illinois Green Party a few days ago, as well as participated in the chat in the live stream. They really turned me off with anarcho-primitivist rhetoric, telling you Marxism sucks. Tried to argue Marx never said anything about ecology. said that they should go back to living without electricity, etc. Um, well, that sucks. Yeah, I can't really speak to that experience specifically. It's just like any org, it's going to be different in different places. I would not say that that is representative of really anyone else that I personally have spoken with within the Green Party. In fact, their candidate for the president was an eco-socialist, Howie Hawkins, in 2020. So, but this is like many parties. There are different wings within it. They don't use Marxist-Leninist organizing tactics, so there tend to be, more factions within the party, less sort of ideological consistency at this point. So, that's if that's what you got there, that sucks. But I don't know how many people this was either, or even if it was super representative of, the entire state party. It probably isn't, in fact. So that's unfortunate, but if you are doing what you're doing, that's good as well. So yeah, like I said, it's you get into any of these more like mass organizations, you're gonna meet people from with different viewpoints, and you know, ideological struggle is a thing that we can do. Obviously, if people are incredibly closed-minded, you may not change the minds of individuals, but you can certainly outnumber them when it comes time to vote on things. So, hello everyone, S4A, please do a lot of commentary for Capital because I tried it and it's too hard, so I gave up. Thanks. Yes, that is exactly why doing the commentary on it. I think that, it's needed. So yeah. Somebody says, I really like the commentaries on the books. I hear that a lot. That's why I do them. It also, I feel like I do less of them today because um, a lot of it to me at this point, I've done about 250 audiobooks for the channel. And at this point, all of the basics are a lot clearer to me. I have less of a need to restate it even for myself. That said, I do, sometimes try to incorporate some, quote, lecture time if I feel like there's significant background that somebody coming in just really wouldn't get it at all. Sometimes, just with whatever's going on with me, I don't always have the energy to do it, but I do try to do it when I can, and like I said, I figure that at the end of the videos, I say, if you have any questions or comments, leave them. If somebody really didn't understand something, that is the place to ask it there. So I'm always open to that. Sometimes just when I'm recording, I don't always have the energy to put in a lot of extra thought on top of what's being said. But yeah, I mean, and I had somebody complaining about the commentary on Black Shirts and Reds, and I was like, okay, great, then go make your own audiobook. Nobody's stopping you. Here's a full refund, okay? Like, seriously. They were just pitching a fit about it. And I was like, literally, like, go do a text-to-speech if it's bothering you that much. I put these out for the people that like my style of doing it. Nothing is stopping anybody else from doing it in a different style. Anyway, does anyone know the actual ideology of the separatists and the Donbass? The Patsoks and Maupinites keep referring to them as being genuine communists. I mean, they'll say anything if it supports Russia, so I don't know. But I can't find much actual ideological information on them. But given who is saying nice things about them, I'm inclined to think they're not even sock dems. Response, I've talked to people from there, and most of the people who are politically active are just Russian nationalists. Few are communists, and those who are don't like Russia much. And response to that was, that's the only consistent thing I've seen. Everyone says the main people are just Russian nationalists, but beyond that, I don't know like how far right they are. I think everyone is pretty far right. That's pretty much the assumption. I think, especially in the countries that went through the post-communist led, decommunization process, it is, fairly taboo. I mean, we've had people who say that they're from Ukraine drop in on this stream. And, it was not highly supportive of socialism, even though that was the time that Ukraine's economy was doing the best, and a lot of the shit they're in is just the predictable result of privatization and everything else. But yeah, I've heard things as well. Like it's not something I follow that closely. Like I've done the background on it, got that education from people who don't, do this kind of streaming, but who actually are experts in that field. Um, you know, but it's not a huge passion of mine to follow that particular conflict that much. So I don't know. I've heard things that probably other people have heard too, that they canceled International Women's Day, something like that. But I don't know. I think that the bigger question here, I mean, you're right, just out of some kind of general interest, like, okay, it's nationalism, but how far right? Um, it's hard to tell anything in the fog of war. And this is what I was saying in the beginning, is like whatever you know about this region and this conflict, lock it in now, because once this war starts rolling, everyone is going to be lying to try to make themselves look better. So it's also that is sort of informing my stance of I not coming in as an expert on that region. I have, beyond basic knowledge of it, but again, not expert knowledge. And for me, I'm kind of stepping back until the dust settles, because I don't know what else I can do from my vantage point, like through the internet. I'm not going to delude myself into thinking that I can get some kind of truth about it. I don't think that that's really possible. Um, let's see. Well, people are actually getting basically drafted in the Donbass, as far as I know, so most of the fighters are just regular people, but a good chunk of them are nationalists. I mean, at this point, like, isn't that just the state of the world, pretty much? The socialist movement is not in good shape. This is something I think that we need to face in part to avoid falling into campism. I think a lot of the camp is, it's like people pretending that parties, by which I mean entities, not necessarily political parties, are socialist or anti-imperialist when they really are just not. They might be anti-US. That is not the same as being anti-imperialist in the broader. It's like saying, like libertarians are against what they call corporatism. That doesn't actually make them anti-capitalist. It's not the same thing. So, yeah. Continuing, one of the guys I talked to said that his father got sent to the army after the police knocked on their doors. Doesn't sound great. Another comment, this is the best left community on YouTube and Twitch, no right-wing bullshit. I mean, isn't there enough of that already? Isn't there enough right-wing bullshit? I mean, this is what I was just saying. It's like everyone is some kind of fucking nationalist. It's legit difficult to like find an actual communist somewhere. But we got to build it up, because literally what other hope is there? So a few comments, I'm not even going to mention that. Your comments about certain other streamers are valid. I just don't want to mention them in the stream. So somebody says, the problem I have with attempting to build up the Green Party is mainly the fact that there doesn't appear to be a consistent party line. So let me say this again. I feel like this has been misconstrued many, many times. Okay, the United States left. That's where I am. That's who I'm trying to speak to. That's who these audiobooks are for, etc. Is largely completely unorganized. And most of them aren't Marxists. So you basically get two modes. You get people who are trying to be progressives within the Democratic Party, which goes nowhere. It's a non-reformable party that's owned by the 1%, and you're never going to get it to do anything different. So that's mode A. Then, after people realize that you can't do that, then people drop out and do absolutely nothing and stay completely non-organized. What I'm saying is we don't have the luxury of time or anything else to keep indulging in mode B. So people need to get organized. If you are a Marxist, then join or build a Marxist organization. That would be the logical thing to do if you're ready to do that. But there are tens of millions of people out there, for example, who supported Bernie Sanders and were well to the left of the Democratic Party and the things that the Democratic Party does. They supported kind of a gate-crashing takeover effort within the Democratic Party, which failed, partly just because of the nature of the Democratic Party, partly also because of Bernie Sanders and things that he did, but it failed. So what are those people doing now? They're either still in that party or they're doing nothing at all. What I'm saying is people need to break with the Democratic Party, and the Green Party is the bare minimum that people can be doing. If people aren't at least doing that, this is what I'm saying, tens of millions of people supported Bernie who are not Marxists. So they're not going to join Marxist organizations at this point in time. You know, maybe they will encounter a channel like S4A or some other influence, and 2 or 3 years from now, they will become a Marxist, and they'll be interested in joining a Marxist organization or party, whatever. But right now, they need to do something. And what I'm telling these people is, at the bare minimum, if you're not doing the Green Party, you're not doing anything constructive. Why do I say that they're the bare minimum? Because they don't take the corporate money. They basically follow like the Bernie rules of trying to, you know, avoid capitalist influence and stuff like that. So you have an organization that is not, you know, completely run by capital, where the membership decides the policies and stuff like that. So I'm saying it's the bare minimum. It's not the pinnacle of the left. So if you're a Marxist, then go do something more Marxist, if you will. But there are tens of millions of people just sitting around, and that's not okay anymore. We don't have the luxury of doing that. You know, the Green Party for me was one of the first things that I encountered. It was back in the days of like Ralph Nader. And, you know, so I have experience with that and familiarity with it. If people had done that years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, the struggle generally and people's political and class consciousness would be so much further along. You know, that consciousness is sharpened not just from the successes, but from the mistakes and seeing what does and doesn't work. People are sitting on their hands, and that's just what it comes down to. And, you know, like I said, Green Party, not a Marxist party. They don't do that style of organizing, not democratic centralist, etc. But it's the bare minimum for people to get out of the Democratic Party and into something else where you can at least articulate, again, the kind of, you know, popular reform message that Bernie was going for. You know, the more people we can prevent from becoming active fascists, the better. And eventually we do need to bring the people around to the realization that capitalism needs to be entirely abolished and all the other things that we would say as Marxists. So just really want to be clear about that, because I feel like people get the wrong idea about that regularly. Also, in some areas, it's literally the only thing going on. So, I mean, should you do nothing at all, or should you at least try to do that, meet people, and see if you can, you know, get something going there or something else? But again, the amount of inactivity is kind of, that's what I'm trying to get at here. It's a plague of the U.S. left. I've been active for about 20 years, and things have only really started changing. Again, I think Occupy was a big step forward versus what came before. Bernie was another step forward, but we need to keep taking those steps forward. And it's happening so fucking slow. It's driving me crazy. So anyway, and I don't think I'm the only one. You know, it's just watching the same things happening for 20 years while everything gets worse. Do you want to live your entire life under these conditions? I don't. You know, I know it's not entirely in my control, but yeah, anyway, that's the messaging I'm putting out there, is people need to do at least the bare minimum, and many are not even doing that. So anyway, this actually kind of ties in to that comment I mentioned about the criticism. So let's get into that. So I've omitted the commenter's name, but they said, I have a huge criticism about this channel. Whoa. Well, thank you for letting me sort of buckle up first. You're too urban focused. Excuse me? I don't actually talk about urban versus rural very much at all, so that's sort of a weird projection. When you tell us to join an organization, I feel left out because there aren't any. You should try giving tips for people who live in rural areas, who don't have the resources available. So you live in an area where there aren't a lot of people, and hence there aren't a lot of socialists, and you feel left out, and that's my problem? I'm sorry, but let's just take stock of the situation. Even in large cities, there often aren't a lot of people in organizations. This is a United States problem. It's just that, okay, you live in an area with low population density. Like most people in the United States do live in more urban areas, generally speaking. And even there, like I said, the parties are not exactly huge. So this is an issue no matter where you live. But yeah, I'm sure if you live in like a very rural place and there are just few people overall, the odds that there's going to be tons of like organized socialist activity is slim to nil. But actually, I've said many times in the streams, if there is nothing going on specifically in your area, because we've talked in the live streams and other places with people who, I remember somebody talking specifically about they live in a rural county in like Washington State, and they don't feel comfortable even organizing at all because there's so many neo-Nazis in the area. And so, you know, my tip, which by the way, don't wait to get all your organizing cues from a YouTube channel. I am trying to put out educational materials and be helpful to people. But, you know, like it said in the recent Eugene Debs audiobook I put up, I can't help you slaves. Only you can help yourselves. I'm just here to remind you of that, you know? So figure it out. This is honestly kind of pathetic behavior. Figure it out. You know? Communists do not simply order the masses to do revolution. That's not how it works at all. The masses can, you know, only the masses can liberate themselves. You know, problem is people will many times try to avoid, you know, more extreme behavior. Like people want to find the easy way. I mean, it's just easier. The problem is that sometimes problems just can't be solved by doing the routine things that is, you know, part of our everyday life. And so people do need encouragement. They do need to be sort of talked into acting in their own interest when it really deviates from their normal routine. So this is part of like the mass line, talking to people about what is, you know, or agitate, educate, organize. Agitate, talk to people about what's bothering them, draw it out, educate them as to how capitalism is the problem, and then help the organization as a class for class power in ways that will actually help fix the problem, lather, rinse, repeat. And then people get their own consciousness, and then they're able to, you know, well, develop a sense of empowerment that they can actually do something about these problems. So, you know, I should try giving tips for people in rural areas. So what I have said in the past, in fact, is if there's nothing that you can get involved with or feel comfortable getting involved with locally, look for something at a statewide level or look for something at a national level, and at least participate in Zoom calls. You can also, you know, ask the organization for to be put in touch with other people in your county or something like that. But yeah, anyway, you know, this is a problem with a lot of Western communists, so it's not just you. I don't know, like, what are you doing about it? Like, this kind of drives me crazy. Like, people waiting around to be, like, handed the solution by a YouTube channel. No, it's not how this works. So anyway, they say, I'm thinking about starting a channel where I talk about communism from a rural perspective because this is something lacking on the online left and not because we don't have internet. Obviously, we do, or I wouldn't be able to say this. Honestly, more power to you. Like, when I put stuff on this channel, this isn't like socialism for all, urbanites only. Nowhere is that said, like, at all. I don't know what to tell you. Anyway, there was a response to this. Just stuff like this really kind of makes me scratch my head. But somebody did respond. I thought it was pretty good. So Having an already existing chapter or group to join doesn't mean it'll be a good or worthwhile experience. So yeah, let's talk about that for a minute. As I was saying, like Greens or DSA versus a Marxist group. Like I said, if you're ready ideologically and in your education to like try your hand at joining a Marxist group, here's what you're going to find out next. A lot of the fucking orgs suck. Whether it's racism or, like there's all kinds of fucking problems. And I'm not going to single out any particular org, but there's a lot of not great stuff happening. And as I was talking about in the last live stream, for me, when people ask for specific recommendations, I am not at a point where I'm ready to make specific endorsements or anything like that. That might be different 5 years from now, but as of right now, I don't see anything I can really unreservedly endorse, and I would rather see people just get active in their community, more of like a mass org type of situation. Get out there and meet people, because like, who do you think's going to have a better sense of like your local organized left? Me or other people who live in your area? Probably the latter, right? So that's like the other thing is, actually there's an organization, or I think a journal starting up, Unity Struggle Unity. And I was reading their, like a PDF of their editorial policies, because they're about to start a journal and they're a new communist group. And, I got to say, like, I liked a lot of what I read in the PDF. They do, denounce a lot of the other organizations like CPUSA or like PSL for having chauvinistic lines that basically they feel these organizations have had for a long time and probably can't ever retract. But their org is going to do it, new and better. And maybe they will, but maybe they won't. I have to say, I think it's possible that they'll do it better. I think it's also highly likely that they'll go the way of many other communist organizations in the United States. And you could say in other countries that have similar types of conditions, that are small groups, flashes in the pan, and they're active for a year or two, and the revolution still awaits, There are bigger problems here that I think stem in part from very few people being involved in this movement at all. I think we need to see much larger numbers before anything real is going to come of this. We barely even have a fucking labor movement. Like the labor unions in the United States, about 7% of the private sector is unionized. More of the public sector is unionized, but the public sector is much smaller. So, as I said before, the vanguard comes out of the struggle. It's the most class-conscious detachment of the organized working class. Class consciousness is highest. Historical literacy is highest. But if you don't have struggle, you're not going to get that vanguard. And I think that we really are. Like, we're at the point where the left hasn't even detached from the Democrats, for fuck's sake. So anyway, having an existing chapter or group to join doesn't mean it'll be a good or worthwhile experience. For folks who live in areas without established chapters or orgs close by, you have to do some research and build connections from scratch, which is a drag, but all of it is. Nobody said this was going to be easy. Is there an issue or problem you have? Do you know someone else who has that problem? Where do they live or work? How about where you work? Is there a specific person or entity causing this problem? These are questions new members bring and need to answer in already existing orgs too. People in urban areas can't really tell folks in the rural areas what to do. The answers to these questions will be different, and different tactics are needed, so a channel going into that could be good. Yeah, I'd like to hear from people. Like, I don't know what they mean by rural exactly. Like I said, I don't really make reference to urban or rural almost ever, so I don't really know where this is coming from. I'm just trying to understand the comment at this point. Like, I don't actually think I talk about that, so I'm really not sure what they're referring to. It's gonna be different. I mean, I think I talked about it a little bit in a video from 2020 about the Green Party versus the PSL platform that they were running their presidential candidates on, which were very similar, by the way. And I think that you're more likely to find the Green Party kind of anywhere. PSL maybe more in cities, because again, one's bigger, one's smaller. That's the issue there. You know, again, if you have an area where not a lot of people live, your odds of finding more than one socialist go down as well. So, I mean, there are probably also other, reasons for this in terms of the type of work people are doing. Not so much in the modern 2022 USA, though. I mean, pretty much everybody's a wage worker at this point. So, even if you're in a rural area. So, I don't know. But that was some of that. And people have to kind of drop the learned helplessness and like get off your asses and fight for yourselves. Really. It's not going to come to you through the fucking internet screen. It's really not. Anyway, got that off my chest. I mean, these are important things for people to understand. I enjoy having this conversation. I guess that's my point. I enjoy having this conversation. These are important things for people to know. Understand, though, I've given this a lot of thought myself personally, and I'm happy to have this discussion. Really, I wish that this discussion was happening more widely and that people were coming to more sort of widespread agreements and understandings, and therefore the struggle in the organizing sense was moving forward. I, in fact, would love to see that happening. So, yeah, please do, share your comments, share your ideas. This is actually a, quote, debate I think worth having. When are debates not productive? When it's some right-wing douchebag for clout who's just going to, like, scream in your face. When is it productive? When people are just talking about, brainstorming what to do. Here's what worked for me. Why do you think this will work? Why don't you think this will work? How do we get from where we're at now to somewhere better? So, yeah, I think it's important. Let's see, somebody else. I got to the end of Capital and was like, what the fuck just happened is the most confusing text ever. Just plowed through it. Yeah, so that's when I did the first chapter, the commodity. I broke it down a lot for exactly that reason. Here's a question. I was wondering if you know what the hell a Freemason is, and why do right-wingers think that they're the bane of all that's good? The only leftists I've seen mention them is Abby Martin's brother, and his series on it is behind a paywall. So I'll say for me, I think of all the kind of, like if you go back into like Nazi conspiracy theories, they will tend to, or just like any right-wing conspiracy theories today, people that they will blame for like all the evil in the world is the Catholic Church, sometimes just the Jesuit order. Obviously, Jews get scapegoated constantly, and like there's history to this, where, for example, in Europe, this was going on for hundreds of years. Jews were discriminated against at high levels. They're prohibited from many types of work and were made to live in very bad conditions. And so they're constantly scapegoated in various ways. And then some of the types of work that were actually open to them, people resented. And then every time that, the ruling class would get into trouble, they would like blame the Jews. That's really nothing new in that case. Catholics, I mean, if you have a Protestant right-winger, sometimes it's some of that, like, the Catholic Church is behind all the political trouble in the world. Freemasons is another one that pops up. So there's a video on the channel called How to Overthrow the Illuminati. It sounds like a right-wing conspiracy video. It is not. It is, it's actually a Marxist pamphlet that discusses those kinds of, non-historical materialist analyses and breaks them down and then explains why Marxism is better. It's actually a very good video. I think it's about an hour and a half. I enjoyed making it quite a bit. The Freemason thing, it comes in sometimes among like, especially, well, kind of there's different points of entry into it. The Freemasons and Rosicrucians were kind of a force ideologically involved with the spread of Enlightenment ideas, several hundred years ago. And so some of the very reactionary monarchies, when the bourgeois revolution started happening, blamed Freemasons and Rosicrucians for like spreading these ideas. It goes into that actually in that How to Overthrow the Illuminati pamphlet. The Illuminati, in fact, were another one of these like sort of short-lived Masonic offshoot secret societies. So, they had the secret society. They were good at keeping secrets. So that kind of goes hand in hand with like propagating revolutionary ideology, in a secretive way, without the authorities catching wind of it. And so those Masonic lodges were used to propagate some of that back in like the 1700s, for example. As it went on, I mean, some of it was that like very reactionary prejudice and grudge against it. Some of it is also Freemasonry in the like 1800s and 1900s would operate as kind of like an old boys network of, sort of just insider business circles and people who would like favor each other's business. And so people who had interest in having a more open market system, especially in, small town America, if they felt like all the business opportunities were taken up by the Masonic Brotherhood or whatever, and they couldn't get into it, sometimes there would be resentment there. So there's different things to it. Sometimes it's Christians who take issue with the seemingly occult nature of Freemasonry. Some of the like weird symbols and things that they use. This resurfaces, it gets incorporated into fascist conspiracy theories, like Hitler would talk about the Judeo-Bolshevik, but also the Judeo-Masonic conspiracy. Masons were put in camps in Nazi Germany. So, but then on the other hand, there is like evidence of right-wing Freemasonry. So like in Operation Gladio, the P2 Masonic Lodge was like a fascist lodge that was involved in the fascist terrorist stay behind network. So I think it's not all one way or the other, but that's some of the history of it. I'll leave it to you to sort of figure things out from there, if that helps. I'm open to follow-up questions as well, because I realize that probably leaves you with more questions than it's a weird subject. I mean, it's an odd thing, honestly. So, Prolkult or Prolokult did an interview with Ukrainian Marxist-Leninists on their podcast. It's terrible for the Ukrainian left right now. That's what I've heard. Unfortunately, I tried to listen to that, and the audio was like way off. One side was way louder than the other, but that was the gist I got as well. Yeah, there is basically no left in Eastern Europe. The Hungarian Communist Party, who are all boomers, are vocally supporting Russia and are in touch with the Russian leadership by their own admission. Disgrace. Disgrace indeed, because that's not getting anybody any closer to communism. It is really not. Can anyone speak on which orgs are best at enforcing mask rules during meat space activities? No, I don't believe you have asked this during a previous stream. In fact, it brings up, I saw a picture of the DSA, I want to say like a New York City DSA work group that like posted a picture of themselves after voting on something, and they all gave a thumbs up. Not a fucking one of them was wearing a mask. And I'm sorry, but like, are we ever getting out of this pandemic or not? So probably not whatever that group was, but I would be interested in hearing, what other orgs. I in fact ran a poll on the channel. If you're in a socialist org or party, has your party had a COVID demonstration for more worker protections in 2022? The overwhelming majority had not. So it's just shit. If you're running a pro-worker group during a fucking pandemic and you're not even talking about the pandemic, what are you doing? What the fuck are you doing? And like the one of the only examples people can hold up of like a major nation that there's some argument for being socialist, depending on who you ask, is China. They've been taking the pandemic very seriously. So Vietnam taking the pandemic very seriously, and so why aren't you? If you're going to uphold that, why aren't you? And don't give me some shit about like, well, local customs. No, no, no. We are pro-science, and we need to, we need to advocate for evidence-based positions when it comes to health and medicine. Libertarians cannot tell you where capitalism ends or corporatism begins. The truth is that it's an imaginary line they draw in the hopes of salvaging the system they support. It also really echoes a lot of old, like Mussolini type fascism. Mussolini talked about super capitalism, and it's a lot of the same sentiment. It's like the petty bourgeois urge for like the earlier days of ascendant capitalism before the market got crowded out by big consolidated capitalists. And there was more of that, what we would call the American dream of starting a business and getting rich. Um, they're for that, and they resent the more advanced consolidated capitalism. So. But yeah, they also pulled the neither right nor left thing. Libertarians used to say that a lot. That's on the quote, the political compass, the up, down, left, right scale. So that was invented. Look up the Nolan chart, Nolan. It was invented by a Libertarian Party activist around 1970 for the exclusive purpose of promoting libertarianism. So that political compass that everybody uses is crap. It was invented by a libertarian, and that's why it makes no sense. And but yeah, I remember Alex Jones way back in like the 2000s talking about it's not about left or right, it's about up and down. So, fascists again will try to do the neither left nor right thing. It's not exactly one to one. It gets adapted for different conditions in, time and things like that, but it's very, very similar. Yeah. Libertarianism is literally the Uncle Rico of political ideologies. I unfortunately do not get that reference, but anyway, they keep talking about going to stay in 1776, stuck in a past that never existed. Yeah, you could see this. Like, I remember when Joe Rogan had on Jimmy Dore and they were talking about their like nonsense COVID stuff. Rogan had on like a 1776 shirt with like a skull and crossbones on it. And it's just like, that was a long time ago. That was the initiation of the mode of production we are in now. If you don't like the current situation, maybe you're not as fond of 1776 as you think. Um, Somebody might need to leave the chat. Bye-bye. Okay, that's better. Watching Bernie these days is really sad. He's been watered down so much. Yeah, he did it to himself. He's hardly recognizable. Let me say something else about Bernie being watered down. A lot of people watching that, back in 15, 16 up through 2020, were aware that the base was, let's say, to the left of Bernie. But the social media stuff that people were putting out, obviously it was projection. Obviously it was sort of wishful thinking. But people would put out, I remember there was like a Facebook group, Killer Mike's Central Park Extravaganza or something, and it was like, this was after Chris Matthews was talking about how if Bernie Sanders wins, they're going to be like guillotining people in Central Park. And it was like a picture of Central Park with Bernie's face sort of like photoshopped, smiling down from the clouds. Anyway, obviously, like that was not Bernie Sanders' position, but people in the movement were trying to like get up some energy for this whole thing, and then you can see like how far Bernie fell short of a lot of the people. Bernie was really arguably like the right wing tip of the left, maybe the left wing tip of the right, not our movement, but another movement. He was just close enough that he was in spitting distance from us. Anyway, the point I was going to make is if you look at the campaign for John Fetterman in Pennsylvania running against Dr. Oz, it's the exact same MO as far as the social media. They're playing him up like he's some like insane like radical, and it's really echoes of what happened with Bernie being played up. And it's a fucking Democrat. Like with Bernie, it was a little different because he wasn't a Democrat, and it was this idea that we're going to change the Democratic Party, et cetera, et cetera. Leaving that aside for a while, Fetterman never was that, but they're doing kind of the same thing with him. And it's just like, yeah, don't get suckered into this. But Somebody says, I'm in a semi-rural area, but like the rural part of a Southern California county, so I can walk one way and hit the urban environment, and another and hit the farms. A third takes me to Mexico. Um, yeah, it's just, like I said, I think it's a USA problem. Like there just aren't enough socialists here. Even in a city, you'll have a hard time getting more than like, and city varies. What do we mean by city? We're talking about millions of people, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands. But it can be hard getting a room full of people together. At first, at least. Been to a few events where a few members from the IMT Socialist Revolution were wearing masks, but they're trots. Yes, correct. That doesn't count. It's unfortunate. It's unfortunate. It really is. Super capitalism. That's what Vosh and some other debate bros have tried to use as a dog whistle for socialism. I can't even. Literally, I don't know why anyone at all, even liberals, I don't know why they listen to the V-Man. I really don't. Disgusting. I mean, just absolutely disgusting in every way. Wrong, stupid. I mean, like, there's not a single appealing quality. I don't understand it. Even if you agreed with his politics, there's not someone you would prefer to listen to more. And I guess that, I feel sorry for teenagers now, like looking for sort of pop icons online, because it seems like a lot of teenagers are having a Vosh phase. And boy, are you going to die of cringe when you grow up. Is anyone else worried about state repression picking up with tensions rising in China, like what just happened to Uhuru? As far as I've seen, even if they aren't the best org. What happened to Uhuru? I did not hear about that. State repression picking up. I mean, I think we're kind of on a one-way street now to a very bad place. I really do. Look at what they're doing with monkeypox, and look at that. Just pulled a segue out of my ass. Look what they're doing with monkeypox, trying to like blame the gays for monkeypox. That's reprehensible. Okay? Monkeypox is not primarily sexually transmitted. It is airborne. Although as I posted, well, here, let's get into it. Posted this on the community tab. The CDC is like trying to scrub any mention of monkeypox being, well, first of all, here's the case count. We're now well over 5,000 in the United States. That's not good. World, obviously getting up there too. The United States, a significant chunk of the world cases. San Francisco recently declared a state of emergency. It doesn't seem to be getting better. So here's the tweet. This is from Dana Parrish on Twitter. Good God, here's the archived CDC monkeypox page before it was scrubbed. As it says, monkeypox. After zoonotic transmission, that is transmission from an animal, monkeypox spread from person to person is principally respiratory. That would be your breathing system. Airborne, in other words. Contact with infectious skin lesions or scabs is another, albeit less common, means of person-to-person spread. African rodents and primates may harbor the virus and infect humans, but the reservoir host is unknown. So that's where we were prior to scrubbing, as they say. The science doesn't change, only the story does. So monkeypox is airborne, just like COVID. The above is in stark comparison to what they say now below. I cannot believe their hubris and audacity. How did they think they wouldn't be caught lying? How did they think that lying about basic facts of yet another serious pandemic is okay? So now it says monkeypox spreads in different ways. The virus can spread from person to person through direct contact with the infectious rash, scabs, or bodily fluids. It also can be spread by prolonged respiratory secretions, during prolonged face-to-face contact, or during intimate physical contact, such as kissing, cuddling, or sex. So even where they mention respiratory spread, they're trying to say that it's really within the context of like very intimate, face-to-face breathing in somebody else's mouth kind of thing. That's like, this is a deliberate attempt to cover up what's going on with monkeypox, I hate to say. But that's what's going on. really, since Biden came in, they pretty much folded up the COVID pandemic response, starting especially with mask or vax. They got the vaccine pretty much coincided timing wise with Biden coming into office. They let that run for 4 months, and then mid-May, Biden was just like, hey, if you've been vaccinated, take your mask off. That was it. That's why we're where we are now. It's why Omicron, it's why everything. So they're doing the exact same thing with monkeypox. And one more slide. From the New York Times, this is a bit less dramatic, but the headlines certainly carry it. June 7th, monkeypox can be airborne too. Now, it does say in the fine print that that route of transmission is a small contributor. That's wrong. And I don't know what the New York Times has been doing, but they also have been really spreading that this is primarily men having sex with men. So when it takes off, what do you think that that's going to do? Because it will take off. And by the way, what they changed it to 3 days later, CDC dismisses airborne transmission of monkeypox. And they say most experts agree that the monkeypox virus does not spread far through the air. Well, again, why were we saying this previously? It's just a cover-up. So actually we have, it's going to spread. Here's the reason why it's going to spread. So the report, I believe this was a DHS report, describes monkeypox as, quote, very stable in the environment, and says it can live, quote, for days to weeks in water, soil, and on refrigerated food. It adds that the virus can live for months to years inside of scabs. So yeah, you're probably not going to be like eating other people's scabs, but if a scab falls off and then, somebody comes into contact with it that way, not knowing what it is, that's a possible way of spreading it. The report does not say how long the virus can survive on surfaces, but the CDC said investigators found the live virus 15 days after a patient's home was left unoccupied. So it looks like 2 weeks minimum. The CDC also said pox viruses like monkeypox can survive in linens, clothing, and surfaces particularly well in dark, cool, dry environments. Porous materials like bedding and clothing may harbor live viruses for longer than non-porous materials like plastic, glass, or metal, the CDC said. So, this is where we're going with monkeypox. It's going to spread probably quite a bit. I do think that there's a chance that it could be reined in and it won't turn into a major problem. As it has in the past, in fact, there was a case reported in 2021 and there was a case reported in 2020 in the US, and that's as far as it went. The last outbreak of monkeypox was in 2003, and that was 73 cases. And it was spread by animals that were imported from Africa, where monkeypox is like more likely to be found, generally speaking. And but it was stopped at 73 cases in just a few states. Nothing of the kind is happening now. So it could be shut down. The other problem is you can be contagious for weeks prior to showing symptoms. So you could be spreading it without even knowing that you have it. So that's a problem. We're about to go back into a school year in a month. No masks, nothing. We're having a massive spike of COVID from BA5 and whatever variant we're going to be on next month. And monkeypox. What's going to happen then? And when it does spread, and the average person gets it through respiratory droplets or the ways that it's transmitted, they're going to blame the gays because that's what the New York Times did, and that's what the CDC's been doing, etc. That's going to be really bad for our LGBTQ plus friends. That is not going to be good. And it's going to create, so COVID, they blamed it on China, the China virus, all this stuff. So when it spreads, people have a scapegoat. Monkeypox, they've already set up the scapegoat now. And then the system, they can just say, oh, we're doing everything we can. It's those darn men having sex with men. So that the public is going to be all too willing to latch on to that. We have to push back. That's all I can say. Get ready now. Would I do a hang-in with the Sockdem video on Taiwan tensions? Honestly, no. Those videos are pretty exhausting. I would rather stick with what I'm doing right now. I gotta save my energy for the next COVID update, honestly. I'm one person. I can only do so much, and with the amount of chatter on that, I think there's probably other people better suited to that. Let me say though, China is 100% in the right. The U.S. has been, whether they're socialist or not, they're 100% in the right in this case. The U.S. has been fucking with that situation forever. They've been promising China one thing and just reneging. It's absurd. Obviously, and that situation, unlike the Ukraine situation, this goes back to the end of the Chinese Civil War, where mainland China was won by the communists, and the nationalists retreated to Taiwan. And then the U.S. intervened and stopped what obviously would have been the outcome, which is the communists would have just at that time, extinguished the rest of the reactionaries, and Taiwan would just be, this wouldn't be a contested thing. The United States originally interfered with that and has been sending mixed messages on and off since. So, the United States is keeping every card in its pocket that it can to try to hang on to its power. And what they're doing is not good. The USA is 100% in the wrong there. And, unlike the situation, I would say, where, in Ukraine, you have a situation where Russia is not justified legally or otherwise in invading Ukraine, but also clearly the U.S. has a massive hand in the entire situation. The U.S. did lay the groundwork for a lot of what's going on there, but again, also Russia is wrong. So we wind up with a system where working people lose and all the powerful people are in the wrong. Kind of sounds like capitalism to me. This is why we oppose capitalism. In the case of China, there's much more of a case, I think, for China being in the right and the U.S. clearly being in the wrong. Anyway. John Fetterman is a liberal through and through. Yeah, that's why, even more than Bernie in 2016. That's why it's so easy to see it this time. Bernie was more of an outsider, not a Democrat, etc. You could make some case for this. But yeah, Fetterman, it's absurd that they're even playing this game of pretending Fetterman's some kind of radical. Does anyone else cringe when Jacobin talks about the professional managerial class? I probably would if I read Jacobin. S4A, Uhuru, aka African People's Socialist Party, was raided by FBI. So I follow them, and I did not hear about this, at least yet. aka African People's Socialist Party was raided by FBI and had stuff stolen for, quote, spreading Russian disinfo. A girl speaking said that they stole her car and phone. They were accused of being paid by Russia, I believe was the justification for the raid. No, I would really like to learn more about that soon. People are talking about Black Red Guard. I don't have strong opinions. I think I follow him on Twitter. But somebody said, has he started making content again? I do not know. America's a death cult at this point. That kind of reminds me. So speaking of cults, let's talk about cults. So just prior to the stream, on the topic of giving the Patsocs a kick in the ass as their sort of movement collapses or their psyop collapses, whatever. This is a real tweet from 2 weeks ago from Mr. Maupin, who told us on July 21st, I almost don't want to, no, I won't do it I almost don't want to tell people I'm a communist anymore. Good. Please don't. Please stop. If you look at this app, you would think that being a communist means, quote, angsty 13-year-old obsessed with, gotta love this, LGBT stuff. Obsessed with LGBT stuff. This is the same guy who will cry from morning till night about people calling him a right-winger. Maybe if you stop doing shit like this. Angsty 13-year-old obsessed with LGBT stuff who wants all Republicans to be murdered. That's not who I am. He left out, I guess, or ran out of characters for I love Republicans. That's not who we are in Cuba, China, Vietnam, or the Donbass. First of all, why did you include the Donbass? And then, speaking for a lot of countries who maybe don't share these views, Cuba actually quite prominently was having a referendum on like family reform, opposed by the Catholic Church, and et cetera, et cetera. But anyway, so this scumfuck. What's funny is somebody found this from 2009. Oh, not that one. Misnumbered things. So back when Maupin was in the Workers' World Party, which is like a Trotskyist party, he wrote this article, LaRouche is no, quote, socialist, August 30, 2009, by Caleb T. Maupin, 11:45 p.m. The corporate media is doing another disservice to real socialists and communists by mislabeling Lyndon LaRouche as a communist or socialist, as his followers attack and disrupt healthcare reform meetings. So this was back before the ACA, when people were talking about is it going to be Medicare for all, whatever, etc. These activities add a new chapter to this group's reactionary history, abetted by misrepresentation in the corporate media. That really wanted to have more syllables. LaRouche's gang has stood outside town hall meetings, holding pictures of Obama with a Hitler-style mustache, and the words, "I've changed." The media have attempted to use LaRouche's behavior to attack the broader left. When covering the rightist attacks on healthcare proposals, several newspapers and television programs have identified LaRouche's followers and their despicable sign as a communist, socialist, and leftist. Such claims are a great falsehood and distortion of reality. LaRouche has a long record of serving the capitalist ruling class by attacking progressive movements. Anyone who knows the real history of the left can identify his political philosophy and teaching as dripping with racism, sexism, anti-Semitism, and bigotry against against LGBT stuff, against lesbian, gay, bi, and trans people. It is true that back in the late 1960s, LaRouche was identified with a tendency that was briefly part of the left. So comment, LaRouche was in the Socialist Workers' Party. So he and Maupin were both U.S. trots. Interesting how Maupin is following this exact fucking trajectory. Yeah, and like he should be aware of it too. Anyway, but it soon switched. Oh, and by the way, he was in the SWP, but then he was in kind of like a breakaway group of it. I believe that that's what Maupin's referring to here. It is true that back in the late 1960s, LaRouche was identified with a tendency that was briefly part of the left, but it soon switched to the opposite side of the class struggle. By the mid-1970s, it was obvious to anyone on the left in the U.S. that he was no socialist or communist. This became apparent in the early 1970s when his group launched what it called Operation Mop-Up, in which his followers violently attacked meetings of leftist and Marxist groups, especially the Communist Party USA, with lead pipes, chains, and other makeshift weapons. So you may recall like a week or two, I put this up on the channel. Where is it? Nope, it was the other one. Okay, so this is Caleb Maupin, who knows damn well what he's talking about. You're tired of hiding that you're a LaRoucheite, somebody says to Maupin. You want to say it, but instinct tells you it's too soon. This is from last month. okay? Mid-July 2022. You want to say it, but instinct tells you it's too soon, so sad for you that people remember Operation Mop-Up and who Lynn Marcus is. That was LaRouche's pseudonym. And then there's a LaRouche quote, since the 1930s, quote, I was resolved that no revolutionary movement was going to be brought into being in the USA unless I brought it into being. This is like par for the course with LaRouche, egomaniac cult leader. Maupin replies, mop up sounds more appealing to me each day. Oh, so wait, Maupin has an org, CPI USA. Are you planning to order CPI USA to violently attack other groups? Because that's really what it sounds like. Mop up sounds more appealing to me each day, especially when so many, quote, communists support U.S. imperialism and are openly trying to incite someone to murder me. Okay, that really sounds like premeditation of like violence to me. But, you know, what can you say to this? This is somebody who thinks, so the person said back to him, you dream day and night of power you'll never have, as well as vast conspiracies specifically targeting you, conspiracies that don't actually exist. And then the Burger King joke. And then Maupin replies, you say there's no plot to smear and incite violence against me. Then you post an icon created by people who openly admit they were doing just that. And makes a reference to Thought Slime, who was beefing with Maupin. If you think that saying Burger King is like a threat on your life, you're insane. You're out of your mind. It's time to like do a major reality check. So he knows what mop-up was. He just said it right there in that article. Continuing the article, in 1973, LaRouche mobilized a campaign against revolutionary poet Amiri Baraka, using not political arguments, but slandering the African-American political cultural leader, and in a viciously racist act, put a caricature of Baraka's face on the body of a hyena on the front page of a pamphlet published by his newspaper, the misnamed New Solidarity. The Ku Klux Klan and other fascist organizations joined his group's demonstrations against Baraka. Well, I'll just mention here, LaRouche's bodyguard for a while was a former Grand Dragon of the KKK, who convinced LaRouche to hire him as a security consultant, in part because he had contacts in the FBI, he told him. So, yeah, this is, here's your left. I like to call them the Scientology of the left. This kind of the level of twistedness you get into. Most people on the left consider LaRouche a neo-fascist, although he never had the kind of mass following that groups like the openly racist KKK or the White Citizens Council could claim at some points in their history. In 1986, LaRouche's publishing house openly published and distributed the writings of a Nazi general named Frederick August Freiherr. Oh, the name keeps going. Von der Heyde. This book, the first English translation of his work, had an introduction by LaRouche himself. During the AIDS crisis, LaRouche said that he supported the, quote, accelerated death of people with AIDS in order to cleanse the country of the disease. He also praised European skinhead gangs that randomly murdered LGBT people. LaRouche put himself on the same side as the nuclear energy industry by organizing the Fusion Energy Foundation, a group that attacked those who opposed nuclear power and that was used by the power corporations to promote their products around the world. LaRouche also publicized and championed Ronald Reagan's Strategic Defense Initiative, popularly known as Star Wars. LaRouche and his tactics of bigoted fear-mongering and senseless violence are the opposite of what communists, socialists, and leftists stand for. Don't be fooled by the capitalist media, which are only too ready to try to discredit real communists and socialists. So, I felt with all of the mentions of LaRoucheism coming to the fore, whether it's Infracell or Maupin or Jackson Hinkle is also somebody who now links to and promotes LaRouche people and refers to them as, LaRouche people. So he knows what he's doing, in other words. With all this coming to the fore, I thought that, it'd be soon time to do, more of an expose. Bringing a lot of people have never heard of this guy, especially if he came into socialism like 2 years ago. You may never have heard of this old dinosaur, Lyndon LaRouche. Little did I realize that, ironically, Caleb Maupin himself would be writing the expose that we would first read on the channel. There's other material we can get into at some point that I don't have prepared today. But I think actually, this little full circle exercise is that gives you a taste of who not only LaRouche was, but who Maupin knew he was. Except Maupin later stated this. So this is as of early July last year. That article does not represent my current view. I was a member of the Workers' World Party, and this was our line. I'm no longer with them. My views have changed. I think that Burke for Senate, this is Daniel Burke, guy who ran for Senate in New Jersey, came in dead last in a 5-way Senate race, lost by a lot. These are LaRouche people. They're not exact. It doesn't resonate that well with most people. And the other folks from this tradition are good. We don't agree on some things, but they are on the right side. Are they no? This is the same guy who even more recently tweeted that mop up sounds better and better to him every day. Part of what made me really regret writing this article was seeing how unfounded many of the allegations I repeated were. Like, can you name one? Because I don't think any of them are unfounded. And seeing people say the same kind of vile stuff about me on the same kind of hollow basis. It's common knowledge among many people that I'm a, quote, fascist. Yeah, a lot of people do say that. I have videos on the channel about how you went to a neo-fascist conference with Julien Rochedy and other Marine Le Pen advisors, sat at a table with them while they went on their fascist talking points, and you nodded and took notes on a little notepad. You were sitting next to Alexander Dugin, and who's that other guy, the Swedish fascist at the end of the table? If people are interested in that video, it's titled Deconstructing Dugin. It was part 2. I also did a video that focused on Maupin's presentation at that fascist conference. So yeah, maybe if you stop doing fascist shit, is what I keep saying, people would stop thinking that you're a fascist. That's usually how that works. So, Maupin is an example of somebody who started out much better. I mean, again, I'm not big on Trotskyism to say the least, but this was worlds better than what he's doing today. Anyway. The irony. The irony. What does the chat say? Where were we in the chat? I made the mistake of scrolling down to the bottom of the chat completely. Lost my place there. Caleb, do it. No one is still calling you communist but yourself. Clown Maupin need to post this on his forehead. Shanghai recently opened their first therapy clinic for transgender kids. So awful. Notice Caleb would never talk about that news. Yeah, this is the stuff that, like, the reactionaries just can't reconcile. They, I think that they're just trying to debase, like, the last vestiges of socialism left in the world and try to just basically equate them with fascist positions and then ignore, like, all evidence to the contrary. They're not socialists. When is Caleb going to call Xi and Miguel Diaz-Canel synthetic left? We're all synthetic left. If you're not a dues-paying member, I think you're synthetic left. If Caleb was just doing a parody thing, it might be funny. He's got clown energy. That's what I said in his video that he did about what was it? Oh, that the fascism was going to come from the Biden side, which is like, yeah, no shit. Like, no matter who the president is, things just keep getting worse. But when he kept saying 5 years, it was like genuinely funny. Like, you had to feel like on some level he was aware of how funny that was. The trot to neocon pipeline is a real thing. That's true. You look at people like, what's his name? Bill Kristol, neocon in chief during the Bush years. Where does he get the idea that people are trying to murder him? I think he's just really paranoid. Um, I think that he is, I think it comes from trying to live the double life, like trying to swindle people into thinking that he is still, a Marxist or whatever. I mean, he says flat out in that Dugan video at the conference, the neo-fascist conference in 2018, that he spoke at alongside Dugan while praising him and nodding along approvingly. He stated that, well, I used to think I was a Marxist-Leninist, but now I realize I'm a populist. And I paused it and I was like, it's time to delete your channel. Like, what are you doing? Um, but when you're trying to like scam people like that, and you have even like a shred of a conscience, it's got to eat at you, it's got to cause you some tension and distress. I think that that's probably what's happening. Who knows? I mean, really, who knows? I mean, he said a lot of things that are very unpopular with maybe, people he's maybe afraid of. Like maybe I don't really know what his true feelings about, Marxists or socialists are, but he's probably afraid of a lot of the people that he's been lying to, and he's afraid one day they're going to figure it out and like turn on him. Not unreasonable to like, think somebody might be paranoid about, oh my God, are all these, hundreds, thousands of people I'm lying to going to figure out I'm lying to them? So, and then from there, his mind might just blow it up. I really don't know. To my knowledge, no one's ever said that to him, but whatever. What's Burger King? I will leave you to discover that on your own. If he really believes what he is saying, he's been paranoid about people trying to kill him since Thought Slime made a video on him. This is not okay, someone like that leading a radical organization. Yeah, but it is right in line with a LaRoucheist. So yeah. Yeah, all right. So people are discussing the board. He said it on stream once and it became a meme and he's salty about it. Yeah, literally, it was just a video of him going, Burger King. I didn't really get it either, but it was just kind of dumb. But I guess he got really mad about it, so I don't know. My man Caleb is getting an existential crisis over a middle school level joke. I think he's somebody who, I can respect his early days of like being in the WWP and getting out there and being a protester if all that was sincere. I can respect that. A lot of people like the US left, let's be honest, sucks. It hurts to say that, but like we really need to dramatically improve the law. Like I'm saying that constructively. Everybody thinks it, everybody knows it. Like even if you put time in on it, you got to know like there's a lot of really frustrating things about the US left. That said, we do real things sometimes as the left, but no doubt it's frustrating. People pop in and out, people get active for 6 months, then you never hear from them again. They show up like, oh, I'm a revolutionary, blah, blah, blah. And then they're just gone from the org and, no forwarding address. And it's frustrating. And, living in this country and watching bad shit happen 24/7, and there's barely ever any public outcry about it. Oh, I'm going to take a drink here. It's frustrating. We got to improve the left. But I can respect the fact that, he joined a party, made that commitment, made that effort. Obviously, like, I'm not a trot, so I'm not going to agree with all the lines, but he was trying to do something. I can respect that. The kind of selling out he's doing now is, just embracing, like, neo-fascism. And, what's my basis for saying that? He went to a fucking neo-fash conference in 2018 and, like, spoke alongside people lovingly. Yeah, that's why I'm saying that. So I don't know. It's I can respect that part. Plenty of people merely drop out of socialist parties and then don't become fascist. They just might be like, well, this party isn't really working. We're 20 people. We have the same conversation every time. And I would like to, do something else with my spare time. And like whether or not I participate in this party, it's not going to really change anything. Like I think that these are real things and feelings that people have. Fine. I'll respect the fact that you at least tried. You at least went out and joined something. But then to try to make a career out of this like reactionary, opportunist, horrible shit show, that is not even remotely okay on any level. So anyway. There's no way that the LaRouche org was saying this mop-up stuff without getting cracked down on unless they had CIA, FBI connections. If PSL did this, they'd be done. Well, all I can say is look into the LaRouche thing. Like I said, I'm not prepared to go into it today, but yeah, you think you're onto something there. Alex Jones once said, I think he's glad Stalin killed Trotsky because it was because of Trotsky that we now have neocons. Interesting. So this came from the person actually talking about the Ann Prim encounter that they had, unfortunately, in the Green Party. They say, I'm a bit too tired right now to elaborate, but I feel something that the U.S. left needs to do right now is apply some of the things that Lenin mentioned in What Is to Be Done, with, of course, adding on some new additions to the strategy, which would apply to contradictions peculiar to the United States and the current time period in history. That was a recent comment. Please follow that up, because specifically, what are you talking about? I think that a lot of this has been done at different points in the United States. And I'm not trying to single out Unity, Struggle, Unity, because like I said, I liked a lot of what they wrote. What I didn't hear is, why is it going to be different this time? Like, really, why is it going to be different this time? I think we need much more mass struggle before you're going to get a decent vanguard. That is my opinion. Like when they were when Lenin was writing What Is to Be Done, there was already like, activity being done. At this point, like we've had parties, we still have the CPUSA. Like Lenin wasn't trying to overcome that kind of established revisionism. So how do you get out of this? I don't know that anybody has really done this successfully in a US-like context. I'm more than interested in having this discussion. Really, I think that we need to, A, improve the baseline education of the left, get people not like scared of USSR history, for example, get people more familiar with stuff like on the basic Marxism, Leninism study guide, teach people words like opportunism, and, improve the overall quality of the left. Where we go from there, I don't know. There are orgs, there are parties, there are consistent problems with settler colonial mentality in the United States, et cetera, et cetera. So, yeah, I would like to hear specifically. I mean, you mentioned that you're in PSL. So, I mean, what do you see? You need to apply some of the things Lenin mentioned in What Is to Be Done. So, what specifically? Again, I applaud you. You're in a party, you're in an organization, you're doing something. Congrats. How do we move forward? I'm all ears, honestly. So I know you said that you're too tired to elaborate, but it's your duty. No, I really would like to hear. So I've read The Renegade Kautsky, this is from somebody else, and it made me think that Lenin could have guessed that opportunism would be a century-long trend. Everything Lenin wrote is relevant to our time, it seems. Yeah, I agree. Oh, okay, that was a big typo. Lenin couldn't have guessed that opportunism would be a century-long trend. No, I think that he thought that it would be, because even in his time, even in Engels' time, people were saying that Marx was irrelevant. So, I mean, and Lenin made a point of that I think it was talking about Bernstein, that, there were already people trying to water down Marx and turn Marx into a liberal. Even in Lenin, in like 1903, people were trying to turn Marx into a liberal. So, no, I think that he would think that it would be a long-term trend. I think that the more specific question now is, we have all these parties left over from the 20th century. Are any of them going to get us anywhere? And I'm really not trying to like attack anybody, any rank and file member of these parties whatsoever. I'm really not. Like I said, good for you for joining something and trying to get educated and organized. Really, I really mean that. The fact is, though, a lot of these parties have been around for a while and just haven't really been doing that much. And I would put that in part, at least, on the broader struggle just having collapsed. And that was, to me, like Occupy was a popular mass phenomenon that was talking about, you know, mass economic demands, like talking about medical debt, student debt, foreclosure crisis, which we didn't have the full blown housing crisis at that point, but at that point it was still just the foreclosure crisis. Um, but talking about these various issues and having that conversation in a mass popular way that at least a third of the country supported in the opinion polls that I read. That was important. And then Bernie took that and articulated it further, developed it into more of a platform, delineated the different points, and got it onto TV, as again, Occupy made it onto TV, but again, brought this into like the random everyday household. I think it's there that we see these steps being taken forward. And, as I've said before, to me, it seems logical that, okay, the Bernie Sanders thing was the last big step forward for the overall left, the overall idea of people standing up for themselves, and class rights, worker protections, etc. Well, then it sort of makes sense that maybe the next step would to do that again, except not do the thing that killed it, which was funneling it into the Democratic Party. So in other words, a left coalition that would help take us there. I mean, a coalition of left parties that all of them are small in and of themselves, but that could maybe turn into a mass movement. The key is, how does it not get perceived as fringe? Because Occupy at first maybe was considered a bit fringe. It became pretty, if not mainstream. I mean, like the 1% and the 99%, those became household terms. It became like a pretty dominant alternative, I guess is the best way I can put it. It became like if you didn't believe in the dominant narrative, it was a major alternative narrative that you were very likely to be somewhat in orbit with. And again, Bernie, it was, mainstream. How this is something, unfortunately, that no non-Democrat, non-Republican party has ever enjoyed, is like that sort of mainstream status in the present era. How do we take these parties and get there? To be rallying tens of millions around something that might be sharpened into something that is effective. There may be more of this. I'm going to come back to that in a minute. I joined PSL a few months ago, and the amount of reading required is crazy in a good way. In terms of educating an actual left, their program is extremely rigorous. Yeah, I'm happy to help, by the way, make audiobook playlists of whatever reading there might be. So, I mean, that is good. People will rather focus on entertainment than listen, read, or do serious stuff that actually helps the working class. I mean, yeah, generally speaking, that's going to be a lot of people. You have to make it compelling, I think that what we're doing at S4A is trying to educate people who are already, pretty motivated. I don't think that S4A in itself is going to go mainstream. That's really not what I'm saying. I think it's always going to be kind of, more for the hardcore. That said, I mean, expanding that hardcore is a good thing. Because that's more, hardcore people who know their shit who can then go into whatever org it is and have been involved in that conversation for a while. So I think that's helpful. Eventually, though, I mean, it's got to be something that's a lot more, mainstream. So, where exactly it makes that, and we'll be there to support it when it does, for sure. Where and how does it make that leap? Nobody knows yet. Nobody knows yet. But, again, Occupy wasn't there one day, and then it was, and then it went for about a year and a half or whatever, and a lot of people came away talking about capitalism for the first time in decades. Then Bernie one day wasn't there, and then he was running a campaign, and it started with him in a room with like a sign behind him that was held up with duct tape, and then he was filling stadiums. So, people are angry, people do want change. But it's a question of like what is going to be the spark that ignites it, and it's just unpredictable. It's unpredictable. But we do have to be as active as we can and ready to jump in the fray, when it does catch. But I like to debate you on socialism. I really wouldn't. I really wouldn't, in fact. Thank you though for the offer. Not really what we do here so much. Okay. Oh, somebody else. Oh, I guess I had them confused with the person who mentioned the Green Party. So we got weighing in on Lenin. I'm not the person who mentioned that they are in PSL. I am in the DSA, however, on the subject of which tactics I am talking about with regard to what is to be done would be nationwide exposures of the tyranny and injustices suffered by workers, not only in the workplace, but in other political realms, police brutality, imperialism, oppression of opposition, oppression in other countries, through a centralized newspaper and pamphlets where needed. Well, that's definitely happening. If you go onto social media, for example, that is definitely happening. Do people read newspapers anymore in that way? I think it tends to be things like YouTube channels. Like you look at something like Breakthrough News, or even Democracy Now! Regularly covers stuff like that. Obviously, they're very like lib adjacent, but that stuff is going on. Definitely, a lot of it goes viral on a regular basis. I think that the police brutality and anti-police stuff. I mean, the defund the police and abolish the police, that caught on in a big way, which is why we got Biden, who's all about funding the police. Like, it's very counter-revolutionary. You have people demonstrating out in the streets by the millions to abolish the police or at least defund them. And then the Democrats put up a guy who literally uses the exact opposite as a slogan, and then hides behind the communities most affected by the police violence. That's where we're at. It's a horrible place. But I mean, there are a lot of different outlets doing that. So as far as through a centralized newspaper, again, I think that a lot of people use their devices that's somewhat outdated. Also, I mean, is there anything stopping the parties from doing that? I mentioned on a previous stream, like my channel, I am a like rando, and I started this in February 2020. And let me just check the stats. If you go to the About tab at Socialism for All, I joined February 5th, 2020. I don't think I posted for a couple of weeks, but I joined that. Channel's had 619,000 views and has 9.13 thousand subscribers. So 1,930 subscribers. As of right now, 619, 190 views. And that's in a year and a half. Whereas, like, let's say you go to CPUSA, which, and again, is not to like dogpile on like rank and file members who are trying to make a good org. I salute you for joining and trying to do something. But you go to their channel, they joined January 31st, 2014. They have 253,000 views. So in 8 years, 8.5 years, which is like, more than 3 times how long S4A has been going, they've had like a third of the engagement in terms of views. And they have almost 1,000 fewer subscribers. So again, it's not all about the size of your media channel for sure, but shouldn't the size of your media channel reflect your existence and life as a party? They've been around for 8 years. What's stopping them? Do you think that the people who run CPUSA at the upper levels aren't aware of like what is to be done? It's one of the most basic writings, like it's one of Lenin's major works. So what's stopping them? Because something's stopping them. I don't know what it is, you know? And I know that they have like their newspaper and stuff, but again, get with the times. YouTube came up in what, 2006? So again, you know, if I, a rando, can do this in 2.5 years, yeah, I did a little bit of drama stuff on the channel, a little bit. You know, I do the hanging with the sock dem gangs and whatever. But Lenin did that shit too. He would like, you know, he would go and pick on some, you know, some politician that he was opposed to, and write an opinion about it. He would do that all the time. It's not like really breaking that new ground, but a lot of the channel is just educational resources. So what's stopping the party? Parties that have hundreds, thousands, maybe even 10,000 members. Like literally, why did I make a larger communist channel? It's a head scratcher. So yeah, those are some of my thoughts on that. But the comment continues. We need an organization slash party which consists of professional revolutionaries who will write this newspaper. Okay, well, if you have a party, then you have, you know, that's who is in the party. Who will write this newspaper, create propaganda, and agitate amongst the population. We must be at the forefront of every major issue. As overly simplified as this sounds, it's something I've seen a complete lack of. In the modern U.S. American communist movement, there's been times where high schoolers with little to no experience were in charge of distributing newspapers on the street randomly. Yeah. So like I'm saying, do you think that this is like the people who run these parties don't know like what has worked in the past? And if we agree that they know what works and that that probably doesn't, why are they still doing it? Because it kind of seems kind of deliberate, right? That seems like really badly thrown together, to be honest. So, you know, a few thoughts. There's more comments. In some of the newspapers, for example, Socialist Alternative, tend to lean towards economism. Yeah, well, Socialist Alternative are trots. So, yeah. But I mean, the point is it can be done. People, like, there is a demand for this kind of content. People wouldn't be subscribing to S4A if they weren't interested in the content. Because you can't really come for drama, because if you start drama, I'd just ban you. So, you know, people go, debate infocell. You know, hide user from channel is the technical term for the command. So it's not that. People come for the learning. There's definitely a demand. So I don't know. I can tell you that I personally am not in charge of keeping other parties from doing more of that kind of work. Again, I think, you know, Breakthrough News has been very successful. I don't think they're formally ESL, but they do, seems to be a lot of overlap. But we need more things like that. Like, I'm never going to be Breakthrough News, for example. I'm more of the, you know, guerrilla basement streamer, if you will. Like, that's more the channel. Like, I don't know if I'm ever going to do the BreadTube essay style, but I've been out there in the real world, and I've been online in the comment section, and you know, it spilled over into I created a full-on channel as an outlet for all these thoughts and comments, and you know, but it comes from that kind of just guerrilla, you know, talking to hundreds, thousands of people in comments and in the real world, and making a channel about what I've learned and trying to continue the education. So there's huge demand for that. And I know that there's other people out there who you know, can do the same thing. And then a lot of the, you know, streamer types, like the actual Twitch streamers, I know I'm aware that we're on Twitch right now, but I mean, this isn't something I do like on a regular basis with all the bells and whistles. It's just really, I started this as a backup for the YouTube, sort of a just in case scenario. And now I just use it. But, you know, the video, basically I just use this as a vehicle for recording shit for YouTube when it comes to the live stuff in the chat. So, you know, but the people who get into that kind of streaming, a lot of it's very vapid content, you know, and a lot of people get into it for like very commercial purposes. And I have to say, there are some large, pretty well-respected communist channels that are constantly talking about money and stuff. That's got to go because it's starting to veer into, I think, some questionable stuff in terms of the commercialism. But yeah, the parties don't really have exactly the same kind of thing. Yet they're not doing the media as much. Why? I mean, I'm not telling them not to. It's not me. Don't look at me. But I am looking at the parties, going like, what is going on there? Oh, we got another edgelord in the chat. Trying to talk about human nature. Don't need it. Thank you. Adding to this, we really need militias to counter the counter-revolutionaries, etc. There's the Socialist Rifle Organization. I don't know if any of the parties have, gun clubs or whatever. I know that there have been several things. My understanding is that a lot of them are not well organized. Somebody was just telling me that they paid dues to SRA for 2 months and nobody's even reached out to them yet. So, I don't know. It does seem very half-assed in a lot of ways in terms of the organization. Democrats are not invited to the left coalition. That is absolutely correct. And yeah, another commenter says even S4A drama quote unquote vids are packed full of analysis on relevant issues. Yeah, it's not just drama. Like I'm trying to explain why a Marxist perspective would say this, but a Kyle Kalinske perspective would say this. And yes, I always come back to Kyle Kalinske because oh God, I think I'm going to say this wrong, but I feel like I see a little bit. No, I don't want to say that. um, Kyle Kalinske is somebody who sits there with the microphone and he gives his takes, and he's been giving his takes for years, and his just political analysis has not advanced at all. And he's so sure of himself, though. I want to say that he's cocky or smug. Smug fits a little bit better. Cocky is a bit too far because I do think he keeps himself in check to a certain extent. But it's just like this is what's been passing for commentary. I think for me setting up the channel, a lot of it was like Kyle Kalinske and like the Young Turks and stuff like that. I'm like, this is what dominates the sort of like left liberal discourse. I can do better than that, like by far. Kyle Kalinske is one of the ones I always come back to because he does make it look easy. You know why? Because it is. Because he sits there at a desk with a microphone and he just puts screenshots on the screen. And then he gives his like elect better Democrats take, and then that's that. And it's the same in every fucking video. And I was like, I can do better than this by far. And actually, mentioning Young Turks, if you watch Kyle closely, or even not so closely, you can see he just is imitating Cenk in a toned down way. That is, he wants to be Cenk really badly, and once you see it, you cannot unsee it. But where are these people ending up? I think that the Revolution 2030 thing that I put out there. It's like libertarians. They went through the 2000s. They dominated the internet in the 2000s, and then in 2010 they had their big moment with the Tea Party, and they're still kind of around and all that stuff. In the 2010s, the Soc Dems, left liberals had like their big, they really pushed and they started really building like the Young Turks and Secular Talk and Humanist Republic. All these things started really building. To be honest, I wasn't as familiar as with stuff like Destiny and shit like that, but like happened around the same time. Um, but maybe it's just because I'm not into like video game culture. I don't really know. But anyway, they came up, and then you have the Bernie Sanders moment. My theory is if the far left, if we step up to the plate, we push through the 2020s, we can have a moment by 2030. And I think it's going to be sorely needed. And I think that possibly the rest of the left will have figured out that nothing else has worked. Let's try something a bit more radical. That is the hope anyway, and that's what I'm working towards. And we will reevaluate in 2030 whether this has worked or not. I'm sure we'll do a couple of we'll do a 2025, halfway there, taking stock. It's hot and sweating into my eyes. My eyes are starting to sting, so I'm gonna have to wrap this up in a minute. We're close to the wrap up time anyway. But Yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's definitely room for hope, but I think we also need to be serious about where all of this stuff, whether it's the parties, whether it's the socialist media, where it needs improvements and where it needs criticism. Um, I think that we do need to have the confidence, and maybe something like shaking off the Pat socks is a moment where we can, realize that we can win some of these battles. And, from that more self-assured standpoint, where we're not going to get knocked out as a movement by like every little wrecker that comes along, um, take a moment to just take stock. What is working and what isn't? And yeah, this question for me of the parties not taking advantage of more of the media is really bizarre to me, to be honest. Like it's been theorized since the 90s that like the internet was going to be this playfield leveler and all this stuff. And I'm still not seeing it in a lot of the ways that people were talking about they're going to use it. What is happening is it's getting used in a lot of commercial ways. And like I said, I think there's so much commercialism in left media, it's fucking sickening. People need to push back on that too. When you see creators doing commercial shit, fucking let them know, really. At least if this bothers you. But I feel like people are so complacent towards the commercialism now. Who even knows? People are like, it's good and right and normal. They deserve money. Um, I don't know, maybe it's not appropriate to like put ads in left communist videos. That's somewhat weird to me, but you know, what what can you do? Anyway, continuing. Community mutual aid is another sector we should dig into. The problem I've been seeing is that many organizations only participate in one sector, whether that's creating a newspaper or only mutual aid. I find, so this is my comment, I find in the United States that, it tends to be more anarchists in the direct action mutual aid stuff. And then Marxists tend to be like forming these parties that I'll be honest with you. I don't know if prior to doing this, I ever ran across a CPUSA person in real life. I've run across people from other orgs, um, but I don't. There maybe was one. They didn't explicitly say that they were CPUSA, but in all my workplaces, in all my social life, everything, if you've got parties that are supposed to be leading the masses and the masses never actually encounter them, then be honest with yourself. You're just a book club or whatever you are. What moment was the US closest to revolution, in my opinion? Does anything stand out? I think the early IWW was getting up some good momentum. And then we had the Red Scare, where the US government made very clear what their response was going to be. They were just putting people on boats and shipping them back to Europe. Um, that was one. I think like the Black Panther Party was a good organization. Was it close to a revolutionary moment? I don't think so. So I don't think the U.S. has ever really had. I mean, it's never had a revolutionary moment proper. It's not like like Russia had revolutionary moments and seized on them. Completed the revolution. Other countries like Italy or like Germany had revolutionary moments and then did not seize them. They passed without revolution. Then some other countries had, revolutionary moments and they had very fleeting revolutions that only lasted like 6 months. The U.S. has, I don't think, and if somebody has an opinion, whatever, it's somewhat academic, but I don't think the U.S. has even come close to having a true revolutionary moment. No. There have been like like anarchists, for example, will often point to like the general strike in Seattle a million years ago. That's not a revolution, though. That's like something that happened in Seattle. It was an uprising. It was a general strike. It was a moment, but was not anything like deposing the bourgeoisie. No. I'm from Nebraska. Anyone want to guess the four, yes, only four parties that are recognized to register as? I'm going to say Democrat, Republican, Libertarian, and I mean, Greens are the fourth largest party. So, I mean, I would guess them, but Uh, if not, the other larger small parties are Constitution Party. What is it? The Alliance Party with that guy that runs every time. They're like another center right party, but Constitution Party is not. They're a far right party. They're more like the Libertarians, but a bit crazier. I've helped out with my local SRA's mutual aid work as a non-member. They were some great comrades, but I definitely got the impression it wasn't well organized, and there seems to be a lot of drama between anarchists and communists. So let me say, S4A started out as a left unity forum. Even in the early videos, some of which made it into the basic Marxism-Leninism playlist, you can see I used to use the black and red flag with a hammer and sickle, which I would refer to as 2/3 communist and 1/3 anarchist. Well, it was just never enough for the anarchists. It really was never enough. They threw a fit about everything that I posted that was non-anarchist, and I had to make a choice, and the choice was clear. So, yeah. Left unity doesn't really work. I mean, it's like Lenin said, we want Marxist unity. We do not want unity with people who are enemies of Marxism. So, if anarchists can, if there are anarchists that can put it, put some of these differences aside, so be it. I have found a lot of them cannot. People are being more open-minded, the worst things get in capitalism. Well, they better hurry up because we're really running out of time. I mean, I agree with you. I think people are being more open-minded, but we also need leaders. And this isn't just like ideologically like leaders good. It's a lot of people really are very reluctant to engage in action spontaneously and independently. And they want at least somebody to tell them, do the thing that you want to do now. There are videos on this, the general, somebody who wants to break ground leading people in something. If you go out there and you're trying to set an example, you need like the first follower. It's sort of cracking that first follower status that then other people start joining in, but like nobody wants to be the first. And I think we're in kind of one of these moments. That's where the Bernie thing was helpful. It brought a lot of people out of the woodwork, and it became a bandwagon people are jumping on. Does it get a little watered down? Yeah, probably, but you need the numbers. That's how social change works. You need the numbers. So yeah, people are being more open-minded, but we need more lightning rods, is what I'm trying to say, for people to rally around. And then the people will take it from there. But you do need some kind of a rallying point, if not a quote leader per se. There's always going to be some people who are a bit more together and a bit more knowledgeable and all that kind of stuff. That's fine, but people need lightning rods. The spark. What I was talking about before. Well, that's why Lenin's paper was the spark, Iskra. It's trying to jumpstart the movement. That's the idea. And we just can't be waiting like 7 or 8 years between sparks. We just don't have that kind of time anymore. Okay, so the four parties were Republican, Democrat, Libertarian, and Legal Marijuana Now, which isn't that just Libertarian all over again? That does suck. All right, so let's wrap this up. To S4A's credit, commenter has not watched Kyle Kalinske since they discovered this. I gotta say, just there's something just so like quintessentially suburban about Kyle Kalinske. I think he's well-meaning. I think he's also very just of a type to a point where he is not broken out of it. I find it amusing in a way because it's just like, yeah, he's an anti-communist, etc., etc. There's just something about him that just makes me kind of laugh. Not so much with him, but I don't know. Maybe I can articulate that better at some point. TYT hangs out with people like Ann Coulter behind closed doors, if that tells you anything about them. Yeah, I fucking hate TYT. Really. David Dole just as annoying. David Dole, man. No words. No words. I mean, just for anybody who's a fan out there, if you happen to be listening to this for some reason, you can do better. That's the point. You can do better than these like left libs who have nothing for you but like, we need to elect better Democrats. You can do better than that, you know? Yeah, look up the Palmer raids, what I was talking about. The US government basically kidnapped all the top leftist leaders across the country and shipped them out. Killed some too. Yes. Guerrilla History and Rev Left Radio. Um, not even gonna go there. Promoting Richard Wolff. Yeah, we can. Wolff is better than many, but we can definitely do better than Richard Wolff. Yeah, and in time, the movement will spit out people better than Richard Wolff, but it's got to keep growing. The fact that it is so unusual to run into the members of these supposed leading communist parties is a good reason why we should utilize pamphlets and newspapers. We could have workers' correspondence introduce the idea of Marxism directly through the pamphlets inside the workplace. So leaving literature inside the workplace is a great way to get people fired. You got to be really careful about that. Whether or not people are being accurately blamed, that doesn't stop a boss from like scapegoating somebody and just firing them anyway, or just being paranoid, deciding it is that person that they don't like, and then that's the final straw, the last excuse for them to like get rid of that person. So yeah, don't do that. Yeah, unless there's really specific conditions where that may not happen, but you got to be really aware of that. I feel that that tactic would help popularize the movement to a greater degree. In comparison to random distribution or a website, the internet, of course, should still be utilized. I think it's the main thing, and it's being dramatically underutilized. So yeah, I mean, if you want to make pamphlets or flyers or whatever, fine. But I mean, have people actually looked at like bulletin boards lately? You go to a bulletin board, most of them are complete messes, and most people just leave things on bulletin boards. Few people actually read them. So, you know, maybe back in the 90s this was different, but it's changed. Not a chance in hell employers are going to let you distribute leftist pamphlets. Yeah, I mean, if there's like if you go into somewhere where they have like a place where there's like local newspapers left on a like stand or something like a supermarket, yeah, I mean, drop your pamphlets there, but that's not necessarily going to be so controversial, but it really depends. Also, be aware if security is a concern, there's probably going to be cameras everywhere, so you know you missed the stream. Would I be open to taking questions on Reddit? Not really, but this will be posted on YouTube tomorrow. Just come in and leave we use the comment section on YouTube as a discussion thing. It's basically moderated, and I do respond to people there. So, yeah. But if you're looking for like open debate on socialism, we don't really do that. We don't have time for that. All right. Well, I guess it's time to wrap it up. I gotta say, it was a low energy stream today, but you win some, you lose some. Without the lows, we would not have the highs. Dialectical thinking, it's all relative. Anyway, I'm tired. I'm tired, and it's summer, and I'm sweating into my eyes, and I'm uncomfortable. So, yeah. What do we got for a closing comment? All right. We're just going to leave it there. Fittingly, for the low energy stream, we're going to end it nothing. Nothing. Nothing at all.